Hey everybody, Zack here with RevZilla, and welcome to another episode of Daily Rider, where we learn about motorcycles as we ride. The special guest on this episode goes to the gym a lot. That is a Triumph Rocket 3, and it of course holds the honor of the largest engine produced in any motorcycle today, 2.5 liters. It's big. Probably a bigger engine in this motorcycle than in that airplane based on the size of it. It's big in a lot of ways, actually. Big engine, big tires, big personality, and some big numbers, all of which we will discuss while figuring out how this bike is on the daily ride. So here we go. Okay, everybody, here it is, the Rocket 3. In the Henry Ford colorway. It also comes in red. I think it actually looks better in red just because it's such a lump. The engine block is all black and tires and wheels and everything, so it just kind of like blurs together as a bit of a blob. But I think they've done a pretty good job with the styling here, with the sort of silver accents around the radiator and the pipe and the fender. So this is the centerpiece, the crown jewel of the Rocket 3, 2,458 cc's, technically not 2,500, but whatever, we'll let it slide. It is actually bigger than the previous Rocket 3, which also had an enormous engine. I think it was 2.2, 2.3 liters, something like that. So they made it a little bit bigger with bores, I believe. So the bore is a little bit bigger. I think the stroke is actually a little bit shorter in this engine. While the displacement is larger, the overall size of the outside of the engine is actually a little bit more compact. So kudos to Triumph for pulling that one off. It also has a huge radiator, of course, because it has a huge engine, and huge tires. It has a 240 section rear tire, which is absolutely massive, and it has a 150 section front, which is about the size of some rear tires on motorcycles. And of course, two headlights, because one wasn't enough. It sort of has an old Speed Triple look about it, I think. In general, but it's handsome, kind of rakish, good looking motorcycle. I think I like the single-sided swing arm. They did a good job making it look like the pipes just, come out of the side of the engine and go straight out, even though there's a whole bunch of emission stuff in there. So it's the Rocket 3R, not the Rocket 3 GT, which is the sort of Grand Touring version. It has a sissy bar and no more forward controls, and you get a little windscreen, that kind of thing. Also, I wanted to show you guys this. This is really nifty. This is how the passenger pegs deploy. I just think that's really, really tasty. Reminds me of the Diavel ones that hinged out from tucked up under the little tail section there. Anyway, it is a full-size muscle cruiser, and yeah, we're gonna get our muscle cruise on. Go, 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 go. Let's get our rocket on, shall we? Woo-hoo-hoo. Spun it up already. Holy smokes. Cold tires and no TC. That's what you get. I had to put it in rider mode to get no TC, by the way. It always defaults to road, which is probably for the best. Anyway, lots of torque on tap. Holy smokes. The torque number is 163 foot-pounds of torque claimed from the Rocket 3, which is just a sort of gobsmacking number for a motorcycle. And I believe 165 horsepower is what they claim. And that pairs with another big number, which is the weight. The claimed weight number for the Rocket 3 is a dry weight of 642 pounds. The old Rocket 3 was 790 something pounds, I think, with a full tank of gas, and Triumph claims to have pulled about 90 pounds of weight off this new model, which leads me to believe that the actual rolling weight is right around 700 pounds. So that is significant. 4.8 gallons of gas in this big stonking tank. So yeah, it's pretty big numbers in general. Obviously 4.8 gallons is not a ton of gas, same amount as a Super Duke holds, I believe, but 700-pound bike with 165 horsepower and feet-pound of torque is very, very large. Another large number is the price, $21,900 for the Rocket 3R, so 22 grand for this sucker. I suppose pound for pound, or foot pound for dollar, it's a pretty good value, actually. I didn't do the math on like how much you pay per foot-pound of torque for an MT-03 or something like that. Maybe I should have done that. But anyway, big numbers. It's expensive, heavy, powerful, big bike. The idea is to make a statement, and I would argue that the Rocket 3 very much makes a statement. Oh man, caught at the train tracks. One of the numbers that's not very big is the seat height, which I believe is 30.4 inches. Speaking of the Yamaha MT-03, I believe that bike is 30.7. Anyway, 30-inch seat height is pretty low, which of course makes sense for a cruiser, right? Because it's kind of low slung and doesn't have quite as much suspension travel as you know, a normal motorcycle, or much less an ADV or something like that. But yeah, that's one number that's actually quite reasonable on the Rocket 3. I will say the foot pegs are a little bit farther forward than I would have put them. I would have put them back maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 inches from where they are. That's where I always reach to put my feet. But in general, it's pretty agreeable, and it definitely fits me pretty well. Being 6'2", I think it's appropriate for taller riders, absolutely, because the bar is pretty aggressive. It's wide, and you have to lean forward into it a little bit. And there's only really one place to sit on the Rocket 3. You can't move your butt around, really. All right, we're gonna merge onto the freeway here. We're gonna try and experiment with the torque. 45 miles an hour, 6th gear, wide open, and we're going 90. There you go, 160 foot-pounds of torque. That's what it'll get you. Basically don't need to shift. Just leave it in whatever gear you want. It will definitely have torque on tap whenever you want it. The engine is a little bit rowdier than the previous generation. Like I said, the bore got bigger, the stroke got shorter. It just sort of makes power a little bit later. It does have lots of torque, but I think peak torque is at 4,000 RPM or something like that, and it revs to 6,500. So it's actually pretty far up in the rev range. It's not even as sort of grunty as a Goldwing engine or something like that, which, even though it has 6 cylinders and a lot less displacement, makes basically peak torque at 1200 RPM or 1500 RPM or something like that, which is very impressive. That's just a gem of an engine as well. The point is, and we'll experiment with it a little bit, it does have lots of grunt because it's a huge engine, but it also is dynamic and interesting and fun when you spool it up. Like when you actually ask it to rev a little bit, it delivers a fun sound. As a general highway review, I would give the Rocket 3 a mediocre grade, I guess. It's not uncomfortable, the seat's nice, the riding position is pleasant. I appreciate that aspect of it, but it's also, there's no wind protection at all, and you're basically sitting in this really wide spinnaker position, so you just get blasted with wind in the chest, and there's really nowhere to hide. And like I said, you can't move around particularly on the seat, so you just take it right in the sternum, all the wind blast and weather and whatever. But overall, it's engineered nicely, and it's perfectly pleasant to cruise down the highway. But it just sort of has the same thing that a hyper naked bike might suffer from, where there's just nowhere to hide, really. I was definitely curious about fuel range with the Rocket 3, just because the engine is so flippin' big. Fuel mileage I have calculated has been mid-30s. Nothing terribly exciting. I mean, that's pretty bad for a motorcycle, but it's not as bad as some bikes are, I suppose, that have a lot smaller engines. I think part of the reason is that the engine is just not very stressed, right? It doesn't have to do a whole lot of work to push this mass down the road, because at the end of the day, it's not that much mass considering how big the engine is. The mileage isn't surprising in any way, I don't think. It's not surprisingly good or surprisingly bad. And with a 5-gallon tank, you'd go 140, 150 miles, something like that, which, yeah, no, you're not going to want to ride this bike much longer than that anyway, to be honest. And now that we are on kind of a bumpy section of the road here, it's a good time to talk about the overall suspension compliance on the Rocket 3, which is good for what it is. Oh boy, it's just it's a low motorcycle, so it doesn't have a ton of suspension travel, and it's also a heavy motorcycle, which means the suspension has to be stiff to support that weight. And when you add those two things together, if you want a really plush ride, there's just not a lot you can do at that point, frankly. So I appreciate that the suspension offers a very kind of direct feeling, if you will, but it is not especially comfortable, certainly not plush. But I don't know, you know, in this category of bike, you're not going for plush. Like I said, you're going for a statement, you're going for something that's bold. And considering it's bold, I don't have a problem with the suspension tuning. Oh geez, someone spilled a bunch of sand or something on the road here. I wonder what happens if you have 160 foot-pounds of torque. Yikes. Okay, well, we answered that question. This, of course, is where we talk about general manners, ironically, around town. And the Rocket's pretty good at this kind of thing, I think. I think it handles quite well, but when you do come to a stop, couldn't do one of my footless stops. It's got quite a bit of rake in the front end, you know. I mean, it's sort of a cruiser thing to have the front wheel pushed out in front of the bike a pretty significant degree. And you know, while you're going a reasonable speed like this, it's pretty light and easy to use. But when you come down to really slow speeds like this to try and come to a stop without putting your foot down, it's pretty difficult in my opinion. And that's just a dynamic of a type of bike like this. Yes, the center of gravity is low, but the center of gravity is also massive. Hey, we got one. We got a footless stop in. That's pretty good. To be in part the wide tire. Nothing like basically a car tire on the back to help you stay balanced. In any case, one thing that is excellent on the Triumph, which is basically excellent on any Triumph, the fueling is just terrific. It's really, really, really nice. It's direct, it's easy to use, it's intuitive, it's smooth, it's not abrupt. It's really just a nicely designed system, and they all are. And I think it's a thing that Triumph really just kind of has figured out, whether it's a street twin or a Thruxton or a Scrambler or a Rocket or an adventure bike. They're all just really, they have nice fueling, which is kind of rare on modern bikes these days. Frankly, oftentimes they're just difficult. And I will say sport mode on this bike is a little tricky, but road mode's good. Woo! Spinning the tire. It's aggressive. It's really, really fun engine to use, as long as you do so responsibly, Zack. Riding this Rocket 3 got me thinking about the previous Rocket 3, which of course was also an enormous muscle cruiser that Triumph started building in the mid-2000s, maybe, something like that. But of course the Rocket 3 was also BSA. It was a BSA Rocket 3, wasn't it? And yeah, it was built in tandem with the Triumph Trident, I believe, in the late 60s, or it might have been early 70s. I'm not a Triumph historian, I apologize, but I did grow up around vintage bikes, and I remember the Rocket 3 moniker, and Triumph definitely did a pretty good job, I think, sort of taking what was old and reconditioning it, rebranding it, revitalizing it into something that is new, rather than just sort of glancing back into yesteryear. So I appreciate that, I suppose. Cruising along Lover's Lane here as we've come to know it. I can tell you that the passenger accommodations on the Rocket 3 are not great. Those passenger pegs folding out from the chassis like that are really cool, but the passenger seat itself is pretty thin, pretty narrow, and certainly without the little sissy bar attachment that comes on the GT model, your passenger's gonna want to hold on. The passenger accommodations I don't think necessarily match the ambition of the engine, if that makes sense. But it's there if you want to take someone on the back. Yeah, boy, this is quite the conga line of SUVs here on today's daily ride. There's a box truck at the front. There's a car behind me. All right, we're not going to have much of a gap, but it's something. We could carve through some corners here. We can talk about the Rocket 3's handling, which is, I can say nothing except it's surprisingly good considering how huge the bike is and how fat the tires are. It works surprisingly well, but it is not perfect. It's not as light and agile as I don't know, any other like naked, but even a Diavel, really. A Diavel's got, I think it's got slightly better handling than than the Rocket 3. It feels a little bit skittery when it's over on the side of the tire. If you hit bumps in the middle of a corner, it's plenty stable just because there's so much mass, but you get kind of a weird shimmy in the bar. It's nothing to worry about. The bike is totally planted. It never does anything actually scary. It just goes to show that the chassis and maybe the bike as a whole is a little bit unnatural, right? It's trying to compensate for a lot of mass, and in general does it quite well, but at a certain point you kind of can't escape huge wide tires and 700 pounds of motorcycle underneath you. The tires are actually a good distinction to make because it has that 150 section front and the 240 rear. It does feel heavy to turn. When you push it down into a corner like this, you kind of have to hold it there. It's not as neutral as modern motorcycles in general have become, and it's just wide tires and a lot of weight, and like I said, it's surprisingly good, but yeah, no, there's only so much you can do. Here we go. What an absurd vehicle. A red light at the bottom of a hill here. Let me see if I can get the engine to do its thing here. I love this little overrun it does where it pops on decel. You hear that? Dum 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 dum. I'm pretty sure a Triumph engineer worked on that and made the bike give these like little backfires as the bike slows down. And it works. It's good. It's good for the bike's personality. Sounds cool. I like it. Dude bro on the Harley with his dog on the back. Wow. Good for you. Back to the engine on the Rocket 3. It really is kind of the reason that you get this bike, and I've said that on a few occasions. I feel like I said that about the Ducati Street Fighter, and it's kind of like that, right? It's novel and it's interesting. Now I think it's cool how it's sort of part of Triumph folklore at this point. The triple, you know, I mean, it's they've made a name for themselves with the 3-cylinder engines. And yet it's so different, right? The 765, the street triple, the speed triple, the adventure bikes are all, you know, they have 3 cylinders that are mounted like this across the front of the bike, so the exhaust pipes come out the front, sort of typical style. The Rocket 3, of course, is I can't twist my hand that way, but you get it. It's 3 cylinders like this, longitudinally mounted, so the exhaust pipes come out this side, 90 degrees off from where most of them are. Yeah, it makes the bike look different, it makes the bike feel different. I like that aspect of it. One thing that's worth discussing on a longitudinally mounted crankshaft is that the crank spins like this, and that means when you rev the bike, it twists a little bit. So watch. Let's see how it does that. It's because all those little explosions going on, or big explosions I suppose in the case of this bike, are firing and you know, twisting that crank and spinning it up and creating power for the motorcycle, but it also has inertia of mass spinning, and it pushes against the mass of the bike, which twists it over to the side. One thing that Triumph did, which I think is kind of cool to try to negate some of that while the bike is rolling, is they have the drive shaft of the bike spin the opposite way. So the crank spins one way, the drive shaft spins the other way, and while you're riding, it's supposed to reduce that that mass effect of all that metal spinning that direction, which I think is pretty nifty. I did a little bit of math, speaking of the engine actually, and each cylinder, so it's 2,458 cc's I believe, which means that each cylinder is about 820 cc's. It was just wild. I don't know, I thought that was kind of funny. Think about 820 cc cylinders in there pumping away. That's pretty wild. It's bigger than most bikes have as an engine, period. The blinker was on. Normally I tap my blinker all the time, but then there it was on. All those people would make fun of me. He's in the back tire. Oh my god, what an absurd vehicle. Spinning tire and spitting fire. Suppose you could chew through back tires if you weren't careful with the Rocket 3. But if you're dropping 22 grand on a muscle cruiser, something tells me the tire budget's not going to trouble you. I hope not anyway. Or just be gentle, you know? So I suppose we could talk about oh, we haven't talked about the dash. Let's talk about that. Let's do that, shall we? All right, clean little dash here. Nice, not LED. TFT, there we go. Dash thin film transistor. So it's full color, and you can adjust a bunch of the parameters that you show here with this little joystick over here, which is pretty nifty, so that you toggle through and select things. I have it set now to auto hide some of the information on the bottom, which I think is kind of cool, so it gets a little bit cleaner as you ride. But in general, it's a very clean presentation of information, and yeah, I like that it's versatile. You can have a black background or a white background. You can choose to show different data. It's very, very well done in general. Triumph's gotten really good at that kind of thing, and this bike is just no different. It's quite a nice piece to use. So we're following the, oh geez, oh, I stalled it. I don't think I've done that yet. That's so much torque, you know, I just got so cocky. I didn't think it could be stalled. I thought the earth would just start rotating the other direction before this engine stalled, but I managed to do it. So there you have it, can be done. All right, here's the test everyone's been waiting for. Off-road on a Rocket 3. Here we go. We got TC off, obviously, because why would you want TC on in this situation? It's not a great place for this machine, certainly. But it's doing it. No big deal. Trundling along okay. It's not great over the bumps. It's definitely a little bit sketchy. I'm gonna go around this pile of cardboard. All right, here we go. Here's the little jump. You ready? I'm gonna stand on the pegs a little bit so I don't compress my spine. Oh, Jesus. And there's the slightly larger jump. We're gonna avoid that one. Sorry, team. I don't have it in me. If you need to trundle down a dirt road, do so with caution, please. That's all I'll say. Now I guess we gotta see if it can wheelie, because everyone wants to know. There you go, a Rocket 3 wheelie. It spun tire, and then it hooked up, and then it wheelied. It is a mean machine. I'll say, if you want to see an actual good Triumph Rocket 3 wheelie, you can pull up some of the promotional video that Triumph has. They went to a racetrack, and the test rider hoiked a pretty sweet wheelie on the Rocket 3. It's also dragging knee and that kind of thing, which I suppose is possible. But yeah, fun. Certainly a fun bike. And wheelies are not for the faint of heart on a bike this size or this long. I'll do one more quick little dash tour here. I hope you can see it. If you hit this button over here with your right thumb, the home button, that'll take you to the menu set. We have ride modes, bike setup, trip, display, that kind of thing. And you can adjust the throttle map and traction control in the rider mode. You can also try to doctor some of the stuff in the set ride modes, which are rain, road, and sport. But in general, the modes are set up pretty well. The throttle response is nice and soft in rain mode. Sport is a little bit abrupt, like I said, and road mode is just about perfect as far as I can tell. And you cannot shut off ABS. Another fun fact for you. But you can haze the tire though. So I suppose we gotta talk about competition a little bit. The two bikes that come to mind for me are the Yamaha VMAX, Star VMAX, which of course is 1700cc V4, and then the Ducati Diavolo, which is now the 1260 engine, big V twin, and they're both pretty comparable. I would say the VMAX is sort of more on the insane side. It's really just like is extra wild when you spool it up, and it's extra difficult at low speed to ride. The Rocket 3 is a lot more balanced and reasonable. It's just more modern, right? They haven't redesigned the VMAX in forever. And the Diavolo is just arguably makes a little bit more sense in general. It's very it's a little more compact, it's lighter, it's smaller, it's more agile, but it still has stonking torque, and can do wheelies, for example. And is overall a great bike. Perhaps my favorite Ducati. I'm not sure if that's actually true, but yeah, I actually can't think of one I'd rather have. I love the Diablo. I think it's a great bike. And I think that it's pretty rad, actually, that, I mean, for a while the VMAX was your only show in town, but the VMAX's day may have come and gone, because I think the Diablo and the Rocket 3 are arguably just the two muscle cruisers that you'd want. Absolutely. Okie doke. Green light. Right turn. We're going to skip down the freeway, of course, and then it'll be back to the Batcave, and we'll talk about how this Mamma Jamma stacks up on the Daily Rider leaderboard. Bear with me. Right, peeling off the freeway, behind cars. That's been the theme of today's episode, unfortunately, is behind cars. Had a couple requests on the internet to try and back it in, so I'll try, but no, not happening. Too much ABS, not enough pressure on the front wheel. Someone can back it in if they pull the fuse maybe or something, but not your Uncle Zack. Sorry, kids. What a berserk sound, right? Sounds like a demon coughing. Excellent. Not bad as a daily rider, considering it's got the same size engine as a WRX from Subaru. Basically. Let's check in on some Instagram questions and we can move right along. Okie doke. Questions from the internet. First one is from RJLU92. How viable is this as a daily? I'm looking between a Rocket, Fat Bob, a VMAX for my next bike. How viable is it as a daily? You came to the right place. Quite viable, I think. You can even get a little luggage rack to go on the back. You carry some stuff. You could put a tank bag on it that would presumably fit most of the state of Rhode Island. So yeah, you could carry some stuff, and low seat height, pretty reasonable. Not very good gas mileage. But compared to a VMAX, I think it's better. It's not as kind of like hair on fire ridiculous when you spool it up, but as a motorcycle, it's better. And I hadn't considered the Fat Bob. Fat Bob is a cool bike too, and I think a Fat Bob is quite a bit cheaper than a Rocket 3, so that's something. I like the Fat Bob, but I wouldn't be able to resist the sort of European flavor and flair of the Rocket. Moving right along, Malik ELG asks, does it come with a quick shifter? How's the torque low down? Is it as god-awful to change direction as it looks? That's a lot of questions. Does not come with a quick shifter. I don't know if it's an accessory. I should have done that research. I am sorry. How's the torque low down? Very, very impressive. Is it as god-awful to change direction as it looks? No, not as god-awful as it looks, but, keep your expectations reasonable if you try one. Johnny ALSP, I don't know. Would you tour on this is the question. Yeah, well, so I would definitely consider the GT model. Like I said, I think you'd want a windscreen and you'd want some luggage options realistically, and the range isn't great. But yeah, I mean, you could, ride it anywhere you want to go. I don't know. It handled the dirt road, right? Yeah, if you just had a little bit of wind protection, it would be fine for a nice long road trip many days, for sure. Finn Fished asks, how readable is the Dash? Yep, good question. Quite readable, I think. And one thing I didn't actually address whilst we were riding, but I think is pretty cool, is that the Dash adjusts this way. So you can tilt it down. If you're a shorter rider, you can tilt it down. If you're taller, you can tip it up. I kind of put it in the middle. I basically point it right at myself so that when I'm riding, I look down, it's pointing right at me, which I think is a really nice feature, and something that more bikes should do, because why not? It's so easy. It's just a pivot. But in general, I like the Dash, and I do think the contrast options are quite good. Dolphin King of Fish asks, could it possibly win over someone who can't imagine riding a motorcycle with a foot forward riding position? Yes, and it is foot forward kind of. Like I said, I probably would have put the foot peg back here, just because I feel like it would you'd allow you to put a little bit more weight on your feet in general. But I am not a motorcycle designer. I'm a humble rider and spouter of random information, so that's not my job. I do think this could win you over, and I feel the same way about the Diablo. It's an unconventional way to sit if you're used to riding a sport bike or an ADV bike or a naked bike or any other kind of bike, really. But this, along with the Diablo, to me, it's so dynamic and interesting and fun that it changes your outlook on it. So I hope you get a chance to try it. Okay, last question. Two-Wheel Wanderer says, so I know you want to show us the top speed. Oh, Two-Wheel Wanderer, you devil. Yeah, maybe I do. The reason I left that question in there is that we do quite a long drag race with this bike. On an episode of the Common Tread Experience, or CTXP, on the RevZilla channel. So maybe not top speed, but at least get to wick it up more than you can on the street here. So thank you, as usual, for all your questions. That was great. And stick with me. We got one more step. Where does this sucker fall on the leaderboard? All right. Okay, everybody, here we are back in the Batcave and ready to put the world's largest motorcycling engine onto the Daily Rider chart and leaderboard. Expense-wise, pretty basic, right? This is the objective one. So yeah, Honda Africa Twin, Harley Lowrider, Triumph Daytona 765. This is about 17,000 bucks right here. Ducati Street Fighter V4S. That's 24.5, mid-20s, let's say. So we know that the Rocket 3 is going to be somewhere in here. Now it comes down to the subjective one. Cool or dorky? What do we think? I got kind of a reputation for being a cruiser hater, right? So what if we put it like way down here, huh? That'd be pretty fun. Suck it, cruisers. Just kidding. It is an excellent bike, actually. That's what's cool about the Rocket 3, I think, is that functionally it just works really well, even though it weighs 700 pounds and has big wide tires and all the stuff we talked about. Plus it's a novelty. Biggest engine, I don't know. It's a good combination of things in my mind. So we're going right here. I don't think it's quite as cool as a Lowrider S. I really don't. The Lowrider it's got some cachet that the Rocket doesn't have. Even though I think the Rocket sort of like, arguably works a little bit better. Anyway, there it is, right there. We got it on the chart. Let's jot down the name. Triumph Rocket 3. All right. Now, of course, the big kahuna. Where does it fall in the ranking here? No, it's not as good as an ADV bike. Thanks for asking. And it was never going to be, right? It's going to be better than the two other cruisers we have on here, the Lowrider S and R18, which is sort of inexplicably down below the RZ350, but whatever. I think actually it's going to be pretty close to the other Triumph on the list here. That is the Triumph Daytona 765 Moto 2. It's a little bit uncomfortable. It's a little bit ungainly to use day to day, but it is a more reasonable size than the Rocket 3. But the Rocket's got a lower seat height and I don't know. The Rocket's just too big. It's too gosh darned big to be better than the 765 in my mind. So there you go, two Triumphs right in a row, right next to each other. Both decent daily riders, nearly as good as a Street Fighter or a Yamaha MT-03, which sit right here. Better than my old 950 Supermoto. Mostly the Rocket's better than my old KTM 950 because of the electronic rider aids, the low seat height, stuff like that. Even though, I don't know, I'd rather ride my bike. That's my bike, right? We've talked about that. That's why I bought it. I'm rambling about my bike again, everybody. Time for you to get on with the rest of your life. Thank you so much for watching Daily Rider as usual. I hope that you learned something. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you next time. Good Lord, how do you people get anywhere at this speed?